I almost did not want to play that this week after listening to UCY's program, Ron Stevens, with Helen calling in the letter that she wrote. And just commend that effort. If you get a chance, go back to UCY and listen to what she read. Hopefully that document her letter will be presented. People are listening. It keeps me coming back when I hear that people can put together these things and actually overcome the nonsense. Whatever we characterize it, whether it's corporate, caucusocracy, just criminals in the office, just not the way it's supposed to be. There is a way that you approach this that becomes way different in how this all works than what most of us have been experienced in. And, I don't know, just kind of neat. Neat to hear, and then someone else putting it together, pulling all the information, gleaning the good stuff, learning to discern, and then executing on what needs to happen. I won't go through all the story. Somebody who had a question, government agency come against them, and they straighten the record right up. So much so that she prevails pretty quickly. As I've been trying to tell you, really, it works that way. Now, it's not 100%. There's no silver bullets. But you get on the path a lot quicker if you start learning what's really expected. Stop making the world up. Just find out what the world you're living in and address it that way. But address it with your power, your antecedent, your power before any government. Buy them for the people. You break yourself out. You say, okay, that's one of me. And we had the power to create everything we consider is the government, even though it's gone bad. We had the ability to alter and abolish that, and that could be as simply as understanding your place, not in it, but about it, and conferring with it, communicating with it in a way that you have the authority. You don't give it over to them. And to know that, you have to know that battlefield. But anyway, I commend Helen on what she's done, and I'm just knowing there's another evidence, folks. It just works a lot different than what we whine about when we stop being victims. There's really nothing beyond it. Not every path will be fast and clean like she experienced, but a lot of them become that way. And as I keep telling you, and I know I keep relating to mining, but this is just it's the core of a regulation agency and position. It's the core of the attack on people. Is the foundation of our life. Is really minerals coming out of the ground or the food coming out of the ground. And men and women have to pull that up. They have to do that. There's a major attack on that, and so we address it. We learn how to address it. And none of the guys and gals I know that are pulling this stuff together the way I've been seeing it and making the records that need to be made are really suffering the agency onslaughts and destruction. And those that don't quite get it so clean, it might take a second letter. And then others that get themselves backed up because they thought they knew, what they thought they knew what they were doing. And they get themselves backed up because they didn't really pay attention. Well, that takes a little bit longer. You might actually walk yourself into really having to roll your sleeves up and do a more formal addressment. So, again, everybody's thing is going to be different. And I've learned a long time ago to stop taking generalities on any of it. Every fact can change the option, I guess. I'll just put it that way. And that seemed to be a theme this week in working with people. Every little fact could change whether or not an option was available to them. And this is kind of like law, land law. Every detail can determine what you have as a right or not, or on the other hand, whether someone can encroach or not. So again, I almost didn't want to play the crickets because we found evidence of someone else stepping up the right way, someone else doing it. But because we're still generally crickets, that's what we're going to play. And here's the bottom line: ultimately, we are living in a world of war, and we're being beat down at many levels. And a lot of us would rather not address that, even the one that we see, and even the one that we may have the talent to dispel and destroy. Yeah, dispel. That's right. All this so-called witchcraft, all this crafting. we can de-spell it. Even if we spell wrongly, we can de-spell it. So, the global influences seem to be everywhere to diminish us, and taking more and more knowledge and applicable knowledge in order to avoid it or use it for your purposes. As I say, I'm not now I notice it's called code pleading. You plead what's supposed to be done because the system can't even do that. That's how corrupt it is. I don't know if people appreciate that. When you have a system that's all laid out for us, that the people that are in that system cannot even follow the instruction book, which we call the statutes, which they're supposed to follow, you missed how obviously it's corrupt, how badly, how deeply it's corrupted. And if you missed that, then you maybe missed about what government was supposed to do, and then you start blaming the thing, this fiction. Same fiction you complain about hurting you is the one you complain about needs to be changed. And it's all still a fiction. It's just a tool. And I think we've forgotten part of that. And these tools are around us, and the influences are around us, and the interference is around us, and we have to persevere nonetheless. Those of you quickly here, we'll just jump into this real quick. I wanted you to know, those of you that use a browser called, Mozilla products, there's a report now, Mozilla joins George Soros' efforts in launching a strike against fake news. So even now your browsers are going to be utilizing what censorship inside without your ability to know, and if you didn't know, and I'm telling you, so there it is. But here you can read who else is a player, and this ties us back into a bigger problem that I've identified myself, that I haven't been able to relieve myself of seeing as a continuing problem in all these so-called do-gooders and whistleblowers, and who they really are, and who they seem to be tied to, and how consistently, and how their names are always in the news the same way. Mozilla, the non-profit organization which runs the Firefox internet browser, said Wednesday it was launching an effort against, quote, fake news as fact-checking software backed by eBay founder Pierre Omidyar and George Soros got its first run out in the public to shape out our Orwellian nightmare to future truth arbiters. So let me go back to Pierre Omidyar. Remember, that's the guy I've had problems with when he started the payment, big billionaire, paying for the Intercept, and that's where Glenn Greenwald was and all that crew, and the snow jobs, and all of that goes through all of this as well. These guys are going to be the definers of, as he says, the arbiters here, of what is called fake news. It doesn't matter, it's just censorship. And they are tying it together with this Omidyar guy. If you didn't know, he's tied with Soros, apparently. Now, I don't really research all these things. I just got to take it on face value. This is what's going on in the digital world. This is the big data battlefield. They told us. I've been doing the reports now. As it becomes so certainly less opinionated, it's coming out of the mouth of the criminal. So we can now take it to the bank, so to speak. So I don't know what to do more than tell you. All your tools are being moved into and through the place that needs to be controlled and monitored and filtered out, so that your work, your information becomes more difficult to find. The ones that maybe Helen used would not be readily available, and you're going to have to learn how to dig really deep to find some of this information. I'm also kind of interested to see, as YouTube is culling lots of whatever they are culling. I don't even know what it is. They lots of terminology you can put on it. I'll be interested to see how long this broadcast fares on YouTube, given the type of presentment that I create. And part of this is on purpose. All this time, I'm going to be interested to see how long it takes for people to start identifying truly important information that slips underneath their radar that they actually should have been censoring. So it's going to be an interesting little thing I've been watching coming on, and we'll see, won't we? But moving on, as we have the digital data, big battlefield of Internet of Things that is a part of the government. It's part of the plan that we plug ourselves into. Again, the Silo Weapon for Quiet Wars, it's come up again a couple times. I just added it back into Minds.com. a comment. Here it is. This is what's coming down. They allow censorship. They allow you to plug in. They allow it, and then they take over. And it's all eventually going to be a world control. And they're going to take away property. That's their main goal, is to finally take away property. And I've realized once they've done that, they don't have to give you due process, at least in the United States. And I wish I knew more about some other countries, because I think I could spread this over to give everybody a lot of clues. In your country, if you have a protection to property, in fact, this happened in the UCY chat right before the broadcast. And before I forget, this is BTW RLM 227 on the broadcast or recast or pastcast. And and I have to make another correction. On Thursdays, if you're listening to me, and I say the broadcast before me, and I did this last week and didn't realize it until after I'm listening, I'm not talking about Ron Stevens' case most likely. I'm talking about most likely the Corbett report. And I don't want to name names at that level, because I don't really want to sound judgmental. I'm not pointing out any one about their failures. I'm looking at generalities and generalities, just generalities of generalities that are not cutting it, that are not going to get us where we need to go, that are essentially misinformation on the foundations of information. And so for those of you that may have thought I was talking about Ron last week, I wasn't. I may talk about Ron some other time in the future, but not for that subject matter. So anyway, our split in the week on Sunday to Thursday, I realized after I'd listened, I said, oh no, that's going to be on Ron on Thursday for UCY. So thank you again to be recast on Thursday, but be careful on what I'm saying. Sometimes the broadcast goes quick, and I maybe misreference who I'm actually talking about, and I don't want to name people to call them out, because I don't really want to attack anybody. I just want to show how the information needs to be more proper. I want us to have a better idea of how to find this. So again, these browsers may not be giving us, they may be filtering out all our work. Omidyar is now connected to George Soros, if we didn't know it. That now ties over to that Intercept site. That ties over to Greenwald and Snowjob Snowden and WikiLeaks and all these people that keep coming up and regurgitating themselves into the news cycle. All have an insight. And I'm telling you, it's all just to expose you and desensitize us, and to give anonymity to what the real disruptors are here. In where these people like Helen, maybe even people like myself and people like you who are finding your path to be obstructed by these criminals, little criminals. This war, the literal war on it, the war of the world is on us, and we have to persevere anyway. And I think it's possible, and so it's just a matter of keep plugging away. Don't get yourself too spread out. Focus on something, because that, as other projects are coming up, they're just kind of just flowing in again. I was trying to keep them at bay, but people get in real trouble, and I have a little bit of a hard time resisting. But resist sometimes I must. But when I don't, a lot of people think they know some things about what's going on, and they really don't know the process, and then they don't want to engage it. They've been fighting the system, the statute, so much they don't want to understand what code pleading really is and how you can actually use that. You finally get the black and white in your eyes, and you start using it to show where these people don't have authority that are beating down you or other people, and you learn how to look at court cases for as dubious as they would be, and you understand how to read them in order to create the pathway to avoid the pitfalls. And I've done quite enough reading to know a lot of pitfalls, and so we just learn to avoid those. And there's certain ways you speak. And I was, again, Helen on UCY's chat, her letter, if you listen very carefully, she's been taking notes, and she's learning her lesson. For the teacher that she was, she became a very good student, it sounded like. So not only did her words line up really well, and I was listening to the structure of her letter. It was very well put together. It prevailed, folks. It's just a thing that happens. We just have to stop making excuses that we don't know, and stop excusing our frailty, our things that we never knew, and just step up into our power. Each one of us. The actual power is not really in your local government, it's in you. It's then what you do with that. But it's all being conditioned by this incremental deception and incremental filtering and censorship. Some of it overt, and then like Mozilla, maybe not so overt, but covert. And people coming to you in names and titles that you think they're another costume, like a whistleblower. And there are some real whistleblowers, so let's not get, again, these people come clothed in the color of a whistleblower, the legitimate one, and you don't know that they're not. And I'm not making any claims about anybody in particular. I'm saying it looks like a big psyop to me, to get our mind controlled, and we better be careful. I'd rather call someone a phony than to buy into him, and he is a phony, or she is a phony. So we have what we called we get incrementally moved along into, because we don't hold principles. Again, behind the woodshed was just another relational statement to ostensibly obtaining principles that we were losing. We didn't have. It caused us to kind of do wrong. In other words, we harmed someone by doing what we done, and we were taken behind the woodshed and told that wasn't the way that was supposed to do it. In the future, we're going to act a little bit better. And if we don't, there's going to be a bigger penalty. And so this is our problem, learning the principles. What are they? And I say read the black and white. Well, they get us to not read the correct one, but we don't learn to discern, and we get moved off of our point, and we get you hear the thing called a new normal. The new normal gets imposed upon you. And an emailer sent me a very, I'm just saying, wow, this whole story that has been exposed by the two links he sent me and that I researched through. I just don't know what to say more than wow. It's honest, folks. He cited to something I did back last year, the end of last year. He called normalized deviance. And I titled one of my blogcasters, Normalcy Deviance. And this is what he cited to cause him to send me something that was, I don't even know what to define it. I've talked about it, but it's now in the works. It's happening. When I said things were going to happen fast, this is almost beyond fast. This is starting to become lightning speed. And if you're not getting what I'm saying, folks, you better be able to grab on harder and hold on and then pull yourself up, because these people are really working well. But I wanted to recite to you just quickly an idea that I cited to you back a year ago when it became more obvious. People were talking about it, so I can refer you to some other opinion, so it's not just me just talking. These things are really going on. I talked about an article called U.S. War Crimes or Normalized Deviance. And it was an author, sociologist Diane Vaughan, who coined the term normalization of deviance. And she did her studies, and basically she says Vaughan published her findings in her prize-winning book, The Challenger Launch Decision, Risky Technology, Culture, and Deviance at NASA, which, in her words, shows how mistake, mishap, and disaster are socially organized and systematically produced for social structures, close quote, and quote, shifts our attention from individual causal explanations to the structure of power and the power of structure and culture, factors that are difficult to identify and untangle, yet have a great impact on decision-making in organizations, close quote. I think that this called as identified by the emailer. I went back to this to see what did I say, because I don't remember what I say. I just know I said it. If you cite to it, I can come back to it. Sure enough, that rang really true about what they're doing, this social engineering aspect. And then another article within that blogcaster was a Harvard professor, as they move us incrementally along and they get us to normalize deviance. And I'm saying deviance from away from principle, away from your law, away from principled life, and a way to stay peaceful in your life, and a way to be in control and not have external controls on you. We see the academia and all the shapeshifters here, societal shapeshifters in play. But that same, I was saying the same incremental deviance was this Harvard professor creates a blueprint, folks, a plan. If you don't have a plan, folks, you're going to lose it. And our problem is their plan. He creates a blueprint for ending cash in the U.S. and calls for immediate phasing out of $20 bills. Well, this, I told you, was the starting of the idea that it was going to be, they're moving away from cash for sure. And then this little first paragraph, Kenneth Rogoff, the Thomas D. Cabot Professor of Public Policy at Harvard University and the former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, is out with an essay this morning in the Wall Street Journal entitled The Sinister Side of Cash. And so I was telling you they're going, again, this is a war on you, so this is the war plan. And I, again, cited it to the broadcaster as a normalcy deviance in line with the author. And then I pointed out, and this is the ending of cash and the bringing on of what? Well, you know, we've heard about this cashless society coming on. I've heard it for all my life. It was, you know, you point out, go to the Bible. It talks all about it. Well, how are they going to bring on this thing globally? And it just, for long decades, I wouldn't even have I had no way to have a mind to understand it up until the last couple of decades. And then I started to see how the global order, the new world order, we're told, really sits there and has been working every day and working on their plan, and you're not working on yours, and so I assume they're going to win, and they're here so quickly now. I told you last year it's right around the corner. I don't even know, I'm still shocked a bit to see that I think it's here, and there's a new report that the emailer to me gave me, but I wanted to go back through some Blogcaster pages in order just to show you that I was telling you this is what's coming. How do they take control of the whole world? How do they get rid of property? How do they do it on a global basis? How do they make global currency, a one world currency? How do they make it cashless? You've been watching that in the blockchain. And again, the blockchain is a very interesting tool, but I think the ones that are wielding it are the ones that are going to slice and dice us. And so I also have a Blogcaster link when you get them in this Blogcaster. I'm going to have these 3 or 4 Blogcaster links from last year just to remind you that it was on, they're telling us what's happening, what's coming. And then I'm going to give you a couple links to some videos where a woman, Ms. Zant, is telling us what they found regarding this blockchain Ethereum property registry connection. And I said, and now you see, there's been people, and even last year, it's been all in place. They've been working out the process of how they take tangible assets and they bring them through a digitalization process and an internationalization process. And so we have the evidence and the breaking news coming this week from the emailer sending this to me, and I thank him for doing that because I don't get out to see this. So, but here it is. So Blogcaster last year, and some months back, about a year ago, and then moving into October and so, Blockchain Partners in Crime. And this report, as I titled that part of the Blogcaster, was Chicago's Cook County to test Bitcoin blockchain-based property title transfer. Now, you may or may not want to listen to me more by going back to those Blogcasters later and go and listen to what I was telling you about those and the problems. I don't want to restate all that again, but I do want to point out that there was a problem. Remember, one of the problems with going to blockchain was, even though they claim Ethereum and copies can be placed of copies of files for proof of your title, they couldn't actually produce an original, which you can go down to the local county registrar and you can find and get a copy of what you see that sits there with the real ink on it. And this became a real big problem. We found this big problem when they didn't need to when they thought that they could skirt around that problem to prove the real documents, was when the MERS, the MERS condition. And so I told you that the Cook County playing games with this. They were also dealing with international partners. Remember, these are all stakeholders. These are the plunderers. I told you just the people that are involved are enough to tell me we have serious problems with this. Houston in particular, because here comes this new plan coming on. But let me go here. Chicago County tests Bitcoin blockchain-based property title transfer. Then I also hit the blockchained to the master was another Blogcaster entry. The first government to secure land titles on Bitcoin blockchain expands its project. And this is that story about the Republic of Georgia, who made a big deal about how they were putting their land titles in, this is a country now, not just a county or a county registrar, and not even underneath American law requiring all these documents are your evidences of title and they have to be originals. And let me just remind you, and I've got a friend who's got a case right, he's kind of helping a guy on a property owner right now. 3 people claimed title to one piece of land, and they all produced their copy of the original document that did the underneath an MERS, a MERS condition mortgage, and each document was different. And it's just typified. If you didn't hear about that, you have to understand this is what happens behind the scenes with all this stuff that's going on. They create and fabricate their own fraudulent documents. That if you don't insist on the original so-called wet ink, the ones that the ink is the colored ink that is signed by the people, 2 men or a woman together making an arm's length transaction type thing, and you can prove it. What they do is they manufacture documents, and they claim them to be actual and authentic. And in this one case, 3 different entities were claiming title. They each brought their own document, and the point was 3 documents being different can't be the original document. Either one of them is the only one, or none of them are, and there's an original wet ink signature somewhere. The blockchain and Ethereum connection cannot replicate that. But apparently in lesser countries, and I say lesser only because I know the system of government that the United States has regarding its land titles and its system of records that are kept for the evidence of who owns what, and the chains of title about this make the United States of America different than every other country around the world. And this is going to be now internationalized or subverted right before your eyes as this moves on. Blockchain to the master. Remember, the blockchain is owned by somebody eventually, and it's controlled. And we're going to hear the breaking news is it is the IMF. Just as I've been concerned was going to be the fact. You know, I'm not a soothsayer. I can't predict like my crystal ball will tell you, but the statutes are set up to tell us this is where it's going, and now we have more proof. It's in play already. I also have a broadcaster entry for you to go back just to remind you. I called this section of the broadcast, One World Currency is Here. And we were talking, and this is specific to China. I went through how in that week they were showing us now the connection to the Chinese yuan and to the reserve currency, and they were trying to fix something so they could go to the SDR. The special drawing rights that nations will have and you won't. But it was focusing on China. China was becoming the economic hub. They're shifting something here. They talked about the SDR bonds. They talked about what was that M bond. There's all kinds of things going on behind the scenes that we don't even hear about. But so I have a link to this. And the point is, one world currency then was being tied to this SDR. Now, what was this one world currency going to be? Well, it's the SDR, but what form does it take becomes how are they going to coagulate this blood clot? Okay, so they've been working all this time. It's been in place and in play this whole time, and it's now coming out. How that Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be. Remember, Ethereum was, I think it was IBM generated. And I told you that. Just go back to, and I don't want to invoke the Nazi thing, but I got to point out, remember, IBM made the machines that kept track of all the slave labor that the Germans were using that later got deemed to be a Holocaust. Okay? IBM was in there. You hear, and when you know the truth about the Second World War, or any of these world wars, you know that industry, corporation and industry is the bottom line to all that. And so we are now moving today and forward. What I was pointing out last year was right around the corner, going to come up on us quick, is here now in a report that I got off of from an emailer link from a website called Speed Wealth, and it's entitled Bitcoin Ethereum Adopted by the IMF as of Today. And so the websites are kind of hard to describe here. They're actually just videos. So I went, as I'm researching this out, because I was, at this point, wow. Let's qualify this a bit, but wow nonetheless. I don't even know what more to tell you, folks. Did you hear it? Ethereum and Bitcoin are now adopted by the IMF. Has to be going to the SDR. And then we hear what this story is about, that the Bitcoin and the Ethereum is attaching to assets. This is attaching to tangible property. We already had Republic of Georgia putting it to land titles. I told you that's going to be a problem in the United States. This story is now exposed by the research of a woman called Lynette Zhang. There's a number of videos. You really have to take the time it takes to listen very carefully to these videos. I will explain to my way of thinking. They don't know something. They know enough to explain and show you where the sources of all this knowledge are coming to prove to you it is from the World Bank. It is from the IMF. Understand the Federal Reserve's right in behind that. Understand the players. What they don't understand, they think it's like a question coming on. I'm telling you this is the plan. There's some property issues that they don't understand that I'm telling you are being violated in attempting to adopt this. But don't fault this information. This is imperative information. Understand. Just understand there's a different analysis, an additional, I should say, a supplemental analysis which will clarify some questions that they have that I don't have, that bring this along into a very serious mode, and it doesn't really require the more of the research they want to do to clarify it for themselves. If you don't understand this, you need to follow, I guess, the research and do some of your own. You really have to bring this up because this is, I can see very clearly and quickly, and I knew before, but as you hear this described, and you apply it to assets, it's all your properties, remember I told you, if you don't know about property, you probably are going to be property, or you probably are. Your properties, and then from that springs production. And I told you have to keep the chasm of separation between those and the commerce side. This is going to join that up almost inextricably. And this is another level of a problem. But title of the video that comes from the first notice to me by the email link. The video, one of the videos I found, and there's quite a few of these videos explaining a lot of this sourcing, is Banker's new SDR crypto blockchain will enslave the humanity? They're asking it as a question. I went back into minds.com and I posted this very link, this very video, and I said, no, it is going to enslave humanity, but they're going to get your land and your production from that land first. Now, those of you that understand, you talk about what's it called? Slipped my mind right there. Birth certificate. And those things. I don't know if they'll need to do that. They'll get a first contact from some other way. They're going to, since tangible things in the world can suffer, and suffer means a continuing encumbrance, can suffer digitalization, tokenization, internationalization. People can now be attached here in a very real sense, more than a conjectural sense that we might have heard before about the birth certificate causing you to be property, and then extending into a treasury direct account, that kind of thing with the redemption process that you may have heard about. Be careful not to go too deep in those processes. They have elements of truth in them, but there's a big gaps, chains missing in the link of a truth about them. So you got to be careful about them. But they did point to a condition in the world of how monetization is done, how these derivatives got continued, how the failure, we should have failed in 2008, but we didn't. You're watching anything in the world that is a property or can be defined as a property or a production from the property can be now digitalized into a token value. And the problem again is you won't own that process, and it's going to be by private standard that it goes. And this is not much different than a fixed market. In a way, I'm horrified by watching this. This continues, folks. This is it. This is where the global order confines everyone. This is where it goes. This is what I've been speaking to. I don't want to get all like, I don't even know if I could, but part of me wants to start yelling and screaming about how serious these next few stories are in their fruition. As I said, what I've said last year is coming to fruition already. That they now have this Ethereum contract connected with Bitcoin value, connected to attaching a tokenization of all property. Now, this is again, we went to China last year because it looks like this economic world is shifting there, and part of this story is China's central bank thinks digital currency can do one thing cash can't. And it's just to touch on what that one thing is, if everyone is holding cash, negative interest rates become useless, says one of the high mucky-muck China central bank authorities. With the popularity of digital currency, cash usage will drop significantly. During extreme deflation, negative interest rates are perhaps more useful than dropping money from helicopters. So their digital currency allows them to have negative rates which will force inflation into your life. And it's digital, folks. You have to be connected to the system. You will not have an economy for you if you're not. This is going to cause, this is an external force on all economies to cause inflation. And they do it by negative interest rates. In other words, they start charging those that have the money to put it out. And they're claiming that a number of countries are doing this, like Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, and Denmark, and it boosts growth. But at the same time it's boosting the growth, it's raising inflation. So which means if you don't keep up with the Joneses, you get destroyed by this system as well, on top of it. And you know that system, it's going to be controlled. It's going to be a global control. Remember Agenda 2030. See, this is all happening at that point too. Remember, this whole system is a debt system as well. So, and there's a couple of servitudes within this system, utilizing the Bitcoin and the Ethereum combined, where nations take this on to allow commercialization of property. And it makes it really efficient for them to control the property. One of the other things that I told you about in the Cook County problem was that the county now has direct control over whom has that property because they control the blockchain. And then that'll be controlled by, there'll be like a sub-block to a bigger controller, which eventually goes back to the IMF. And the control of that property, the titles, the value is all controlled by an international body, and it's probably a private body. It's not under law. And you will walk your property right into that system. It'll be, they say in fact, they started out in China, interestingly, they tokenized tea in China to show that this asset could be value. In fact, I thought the pot coins were valuable because they actually based themselves on an industry, or could be, that the industry itself needed that ability to transfer value that wasn't being given to them by the government. In other words, they were becoming, their money, their wealth was from the land, from the pot, was becoming a wealth that the system could not deal with and would not want to deal with. That the digital tokenization of this value would make value in the coin itself and to be used, because it's now a thing that almost requires motion within the system. And I realized that actual production, tokenized production, could be viable, but it's only because there was a withholding of value by the governments themselves. Now the governments are going to take that on, and governments owning all the property, if we understand it from the United States of America standpoint, is a real problem. It is the problem. You are thrust back into the new Middle Ages, and if you're not part of that system, you're probably dead. I mean, it's the way that would work. You're not going to have it. But in the United States of America, for those it's not about fear porn. This is about, you need to know, like I said, if you don't know about property, you probably are property. Or you're going to be property. I see, not why, not you see why, but I see how, if you understand property, what they're doing here is a violation in the United States of America, as I told you before. And it's because of the protections in the system. And if you don't insist that system, but for those of you that want to denounce the government, if you denounce this part of the government, you're cutting your head off. You're cutting your nose to spite your face, and then they'll take your head. It's going to be that simple. Unless you insist on the fidelity of your system of records and your courts, notwithstanding our problems right now, and your understanding of what the due process is to ensure that is required and recognized. You can avoid this global imposition. We may be the last country to still be able to do it. I still have the optimism to believe we can do what we need to do. We have the protection in only one country of the world, and that's the United States, because of the way its system of land laws sets up and the things around it. It's all been subverted. Well, it's only been subverted where you don't know to do it properly. It's not been subverted around me or those that I know. And I see people that don't know, they thought they knew, and they don't understand what's happening, that there's a due process available. If you do not enter into the due process, it's the only way to protect your property. In fact, in one of the statutes I just found, I had lost it, and I found it again looking for something else. There shall be no suit maintained that will set aside, annul, or cancel a patent of the United States of America. A decision that interferes with that has the force and effect of canceling, annulling, or setting aside a patent of the United States. So any suit that comes against the rights within that patent, that you have evidence that you have the assignee status to, it cannot be maintained. If a suit can't be maintained, and then you know how to avoid the identity that they need to notice, but if a suit against a patent cannot be maintained, how does the government come against you to steal your land? Under the color of authority, which you can identify as some sort of a crime if it's not a felony. It's a felony in a couple states I've seen. So, maybe not everywhere, but they're still crimes. Now, I just went really quickly on something. When you find out that these patents are not supposed to be infringed, interfered with, and you understand that's the land law of the United States of America, you're going to see what I was saying about the Cook County problem with the clerk, and you're going to see why the MERS problem is a problem, and why it was unlawful and is unlawful, and you'll see why taxation's unlawful, and you'll see why moving this whole thing and monetizing, internationally monetizing this land through the clerk's office is a violation. It's an interference and obstruction with your rights and property remedies under a color of authority that was never supposed to cancel, annul, or set aside these patents. So I've been telling you what the point was and what the focus will be for you. Your bastion, your secure, your safe haven, your place is in the documents the government has created to protect. They have to warrant that conveyance, that disposal, and they have to warrant and protect it. And that's what the function of legitimate government. And anybody coming outside of that's in illegitimate force. That's how you quickly identify it. This system is an affront to all of that. Because when you see what they do as you listen to the videos, you'll see they tokenize something. They aren't even dealing even with the token itself. They deal in these derivatives. Always the system is not even touching even the things, and not even the things about the things. You listen very carefully how they're doing this. And if you can keep track of that, I think you'll be fortified to understand how to take this new commingled fictional currency. I don't say that, just drives me nuts. Everyone wants to worry about this fiat currency, and yet they'll jump on a Bitcoin. What? And then Ethereum. IBM invented project to future bind it to this point. What? What are you folks thinking? And then we see now it's going to come, it's been reinforced in China. They planned it by digitalizing tea. They found that they can do products, and now this is coming into the country of the United States, which is the other big news. Big news Brzezinski. That this Ethereum Bitcoin melding to equate to an SDR, an internationalized SDR, is going to be supported by asset value that's tokenized. And we see the first evidence of it, and this is the news, under this thing called an AC chain. And they have all these mnemonic designations. In this case, it's SRT. There's an REF. There's a GLT. There's all these different tokenized, digitalized mnemonics for all these different types of digital cashless, I don't even know what to call them. They're crime. They're instruments of destruction. This one's called an SRT. First evidence. And what's interesting about the problem here, also, and I have a little bit of hesitation to just completely embrace that it is happening, is when you look at the presentation on this website, acchain.org, it's badly translated, and you can see the way they translate. If you have anything, if you watch translators, digital translators work, that you can kind of tell that this appears to be somewhat pointed toward a Chinese originating language that was translated to English, and they don't do a very good job of it. Now, if this was my problem with that is if this was I can't say legitimate. This may be very legitimate, but this is executed very well. They wouldn't have those problems. And so you have to listen to the videos and watch the videos that I'm telling you very carefully, so you can be pointed to certain things that you might miss because things go a little quick. But this website says SRT U.S. Dallas Real Estate Project Token is now officially launching. What are we doing? They're causing a real estate token to be interjected as a digital value. The page on this says, the statements on this, and listen to the name, AC Chain, ACCHANAIN. Here's what it means, stands for Asset Collection Chain. Asset Collection Chain. What did I tell you before about the Cook County, folks? I said what they're doing, and they said it right in the article, it would make it easier for the government to lien and take the property. What does asset collection sound like to you? This is the global sponge of all tangible things. And I'm going to I said it before, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to ruin the joke for you. The punchline is now, that includes you. That includes what you do. For all of you thought you were chattel or could prove it, or the patriots, or whatever your idea, the libertines, whatever the idea, you're being treated like cattle. Here it is, folks. This is in the works. This is tied through Bitcoin and Ethereum to SDR, international money, which you can't get. In fact, this asset collection chain appears to be a Chinese-originated project that they're going to take properties in Dallas to it's like the T's in China. They're going to take property now in Dallas. That this is not available, you'll hear, to so-called citizens of the United States. I think it's because it's that M-bond experiment they were doing. It's only open to Chinese investors, as you heard last year that I read about. That's one view. There's another reason why it may not be available to us, and that's because as, quote, citizens of the United States, you don't have the status in order to gain it, and some others will. They're not actually saying who can gain this. They say you, but you are the one that have all your assets collected by this process. The ones that will be controlled will be the ones that control the nodes and the tokens, which are all governmental or partnerships. Again, these stakeholders. Asset collection chain, ACCHAIN, is a global open public community. In other words, there's nothing that can be considered a property that won't be susceptible to be absorbed by this sponge. It's an open public community, and you think open source, open community is something that they've been pumping you on the internet for all this time, and everyone's going to look at it, oh, it's an open source public community. Good deal. This is the asset digital platform and tool. Hey, you're going to be the tool. You keep listening to a lot of people pump up this condition, and crypto coins, the ones that they're going to be choosing, the ones to come. You're going to find out how much of a tool you are. ACC is the standard coin of asset. Asset collection is a set of sophisticated, complete, and self-improving standard distributed general ledger. You can always hear already hear some of the grammatical problems. Let me just go to the words they're using. This is self-improving. This is no different than privately controlled. This is like human rights. This is like a UN. It's self-improving. This is all stakeholder stuff. They monitor and self-improve to keep control. This is all part of that method that I talk about over and over. The words are right here. This is a self-improving. How does it self-improve? How does it fix wounds? You're not going to be in control of that. What do they consider a wound? It'll be a threat to the system. What that threat? You want in your property. Which you won't have anyway because you're not smart enough to figure out how you were to keep it away or make the challenge when they come and steal it. Or try to. Each distributed node generates a new block, parenthetically copying the ACC general ledger to form an asset chain. Form, no substance, just this form that we all buy into, an asset chain. This is the chain of title. This is in the Ethereum side. The asset owners, parenthetically the issuer, developers, traders can copy assets by copying the ACC to digitize and generate tokens. We're talking about a value here that plunderers get a taste of here and a bit from through the ICO, initial coin offering, to achieve token recognition and circulation. Do you think you're going to get token recognition, folks? And if you can't, do you get circulation? Not in this body. Not in a dead body. They talk about this is a dead body. These are zombies they're talking about here, and they have circulation. Pretty interesting. Here's the point, though. You're not going to have a token recognized. You won't have that status. The digitization of assets. This should terrify you, folks. I mean, I look at this stuff. I can't imagine I'm reading it. The digitization of assets greatly. Remember now, folks, they're not messing with the asset. They're just digitizing it. Now, there's going to be a chain of property, paper, that's going to give them the right to do that. So that's your consent. Well, whether that's through ignorance or knowing. Or just mistake. Just error. Digitization of assets greatly improves the circulation efficiency of assets and effectively breaks the trade barriers that block the economic development. This is all commerce side. They're talking about digitizing production for the purpose of commerce. That's a theft. They're going to make it more efficient to effect the theft. It's going to lower trade barriers. Folks, do you think it's a trade barrier that your patent says they can't touch it? You think that's a trade barrier? They're going to break it down. They're going to tear that down. There is no borders, folks. Everyone keeps saying, got to have borders. You don't have borders. No, you got to have a border. This is the type of thing they're breaking down. They're breaking down the border that protects your property. And they're doing it internationally. And here's what it says, the final sentence of this paragraph. The digitization of assets is the trend of internationalization. This is on a project that says that this is attaching tokenizing assets in Dallas, Texas. Houston, we have a problem. You're next. I keep thinking about reading this. I'm partly speechless. This has happened so quickly, and we're seeing now the rudiments of this global condition, and there will not be one identifiable thing that will not be able to be soaked up by this digitization internationalization sponge. It'll only be the will of the people. Each one of you. They explain this ACCchain.org supernode system in a 2-minute video. You'll get the link there if you don't find it in the prayer links. It's all in. You got to watch every bit of it. I want to remind you what this is: an electronic registry, and I want to call your mind back to the United States of America and the mortgage electronic registration system, which was the MERS system that was found to be illegal. Because it allows these entities to circumvent the paperwork that would prove whom has the right to the title. And none have the rights. And so there's a presumption that there's rights, and there was a presumption the system was good, and yet it failed to meet the requirements of the law, at least in the United States. And all it is an electronic registration system. Isn't the tokenization of real estate nothing more than the electronic registration system? As a corollary, then, if MERS cannot fulfill the needs of the laws of the United States regarding the perfection of properties by their title of their documentation as recorded in the county clerk's office so that all the world can find it in locale. How is the tokenization not as violation and then it's internationalized? Is the MERS explanation is telegraphing the Bitcoin, the tokenization and contractual, the Ethereum connection before they got here today, that we are now giving so-called breaking news. And I think this really is breaking news. This is informing us of a very, I don't even know how to describe how horrendous, how encompassing this destruction is going to be if we buy into it and allow it. Another video has the title, "The Global Unit of Account is now shifting from USD to the SDR," and this is from ITM Trading's Lynette Zhang, Ms. Zhang that I talked to before. I guess she's got a trading thing. I think she does gold and silver. I wasn't interested in that. And also, as I said, she doesn't have some insights that she knows she's going to go look for, and I know she'll find them. The point is this is information that you need to hear, what she has been developing and what she has had people helping her to bring the graphics to you so you can see yourself how this will work out, how it is planned out. And it's been, as I told you back when, last year, that China was handed by the IMF the ability to set this up. And now you're seeing that it's been done. They work pretty quickly, don't they? Got a lot of billions of people to work from, I suppose. But now it's now coming forward, and there's telltale Chinese connections to the translational problems on that website that show you that they are a player and they're coming to America. I told you, like the 80s when Japan had in their bubble burst, Japan had to come in and they took all their cash and they bought property. I told you China was going to do that with the 2008 bubble burst. Only this time now they're going to function, they're going to combine that with a transformation of a monetary system. And you're watching the Bitcoin and the Ethereum, it combined is what they believe is going to replace the county clerk's office protection of your property. But it can't. It can in two ways. The county clerk is supposed to be a neutral repository. The Bitcoin is not a neutral repository, and it will not have original documents. And that's what's required. After you see what happened in the MERS fiasco, and it's continuing, after you see what happens in there, you realize that entities will fabricate paperwork to say that's their right to the title, and then there's no review, and it's administrative, and it's through an arbiter, and it's through this consensus, or it's through this dispute resolution. I tell you that it's a felony. Then you may start to understand the dire condition that's set up. It's happening right now. I think it's just going to be a matter of time. All the county clerks will have to be told is that you will take on this software and you will allow the files to be run that you've been documenting and digitizing, and that's going to be stuck in a ledger, and no one will really be even understanding that. You'll just go put your documents into the system and don't know it's going into a private partnership system. That is the assets being monetized on a level to substantiate property support for that SDR, that global currency, the one world money. Pretty fascinating how they pulled this together. And so what we keep saying, well, why didn't the United States come up and do this? Well, they were the brain, they were the backbone for how it got started, but this was not, I mean, when you have billions and billions of people, I guess you have a lot of asset, chattel out there, to support, an infinite amount of things, folks. This is what I say, that there's no limit on the things they can collect. And I'm going to remind you, the carbon market is down to the atom of carbon, or molecule, of carbon dioxide. And that, there's a market behind it. So there's a quantification, and they can now tokenize that value. Now when you think about an unlimited ledger, and they are able to now get down to molecules and monetized molecules, now you start seeing what they're saying. The air you breathe, everything that goes on can be now put into a value. The problem will be you're not going to have any benefit from that. You will actually be paying to actually keep the property so they can do that to you. And part of that's because you didn't understand and keep your property rights and assert the rights that were there to assert and do it in the way that was provided for you to do. And we see the focus again back to China, where now it just was breaking as I was getting on the broadcast. Bitcoin blows through $4,000 as Asia demand soars. See, it's the Asia demand is driving this thing. It's just a demand. It's a pseudo demand. It's just to get people excited. They're going to push this thing up to get you to buy in. This is all part of the psyop. But now let's put it back. Bitcoin blows through 4,000. Does it matter what its value is when you know it's a noose that's going to be placed around your neck, and it's going to be a leash being tied on all your property? Do you really want to see it go that high? Do you want to see it at all used? Now, I understand the current speculations. I understand all that. I may have made a mistake not jumping in when I saw it, just as a grin and a giggle. I still may not be too smart or intelligent to not jump in even in the break where we go to a neutral exchange and getting coins of all kinds coming through and doing some accounts that way. But once this solidifies, these registries will become controlled, and not by governments either. Even for as much as we don't want the government to control it. No, it's going to be worse. It's going to be a private organization. If you don't think the UN doesn't reference, I'm not referencing the UN as well. That's what you see. That they change all this stuff. You look at the European countries being controlled by the EU and see the nonsense that happens there. None of you are over there are involved with that. They might tell you that you are, but you have no decision to make. Here in the monetary structure, Asia is coming into power. They are the driver. They have actually made the plan. You weren't a part of that either. So the big deal here, folks, is they're taking Bitcoin and Ethereum projects, combining them, and accepting that as a special drawing right on an international level, and the Bitcoin and the Ethereum will now look back and tokenize assets, production, and property. The tangible wealth of the world is now being attached by a global few. And I don't know what to tell you on how, I don't know how evil that is. That's just beyond. And yet I see a glimpse of the fire is still available in the law of the land of the United States of America to call it out and end it. And this is going to be, I don't know. My thought is we're too ignorant as a people. I see it every day. And I'm talking about the most basic stuff. We don't have a foundation in this anymore. And as I was saying before, we may not have the capacity to have a foundation. If all that's true, then I'm optimistic for no good reason. That said, when I hear letters like what Helen wrote, we're that close, folks. We are that close. We can stomp this down. And all it'll take is you understand about property, and you understand that you won't allow it to your production to be monetized through digitization, and then by an internationalization as well, to become some support for baskets of fiat systems. They're joining what I told you needed to maintain a chasm. You need to keep your land and your production separate from commercialization. This is the bridge that joins and destroys. This is the planks they throw from the pirate ship onto your wealth. And so what do we see Trump doing right after this disclosure, where the central power, economic power now looks like it's been forming up and has been requested to by to be China, requested by the IMF, which is the Federal Reserve, which is what? The United States and Congress. So what do we see Trump do? He warns Xi The trade war with China will begin on Monday. Now, why would you make a trade war on someone who's going to hold the bag of money, folks? Unless this is a plan. This is a setup for a destruction. How do you win the trade war when you're not in control of the assets, of the production, the value, or the transactions that go on a plunder of the wealth of the people and their land and the nature and the watershed, and commercialize it for these profiteers and plunderers? How do you win that war unless the plan is that they're not planning to? Kind of like you look around, the United States does all over the world. Now we look at the truth of it. Wherever they put their foot, just a bunch of mess they make. So we're going to bring democracy and the rule of law. Rule of law is the problem, folks. That's the plan. Democracy is the plan. They democratize. You heard it. It's the open community. They democratize now your wealth and assets, and they take control of it. Oh, your name is on it, and you'll pay the taxes because you haven't figured out how the patented land of the United States is not supposed to be interfered with. But you'll pay the taxes to pay these folks to set up the system, to steal it from you, and then charge you for all the costs of doing so, while they take the derivative value. Well, I'm not even talking yet about the bonding side of all this. Remember, they talked originally that the SDR was the SDR bond. That's not the asset. I already told you they don't touch the asset. They actually make a fiction connection to it, and then they don't touch that either. They make another derivative from that. It's like their hands are clean on how they do this. It's all crime, but they can say, my hands are clean. And you done it. You allowed me to do it. So Trump warns Xi, the premier of China, or president, whoever he is, another talking head, that the United States is going to create a trade war against the country who's now planning the new finances for the world with the blessing of Congress. And let me remind you that here we got the United States, we have Congress being involved, the Fed, IMF, you got the Bank of International Settlements. Remember, I've reported on all of this. I mean, it's on and on and on about tying it all together. I don't know if I can't do it in a broadcast. And I don't even know if my mind will work that way anyway. To me, it's just a stream of information that you either keep or you don't. You either understand what's important or you don't. And so I just kind of move at it that way. That doesn't make me real formalized as far as any kind of education I might provide. I'm not that organized. It doesn't come to me that way. But certainly I remember a lot of the high points. And you start seeing the anomalies within that, if you can remember those. And I may not get every word, a jot and tittle, and organization that's involved, but I get it myself. I get it enough. I know where this is going. I know how it ties together, and I know the lesser things. Why talk about the lesser things all the time? I've gotten a long time away of I don't try to recite so much that look how much he knows. No, I tend to know a lot anyway because of the type of subject matter. What I'm saying is that I'm not that trivial pursuit guy I used to be. I really don't care about all that. I don't need to be the guy that has all the answers on everything, which wasn't really that I had to. I just did. It was just, if you look out in the world with a clear mind, you see stuff, folks. You just can't help but see it. So we got all around the world. We go to China. Now China is commissioned by the IMF to create that digitization process. We read about it last year. They've done it. It's now in effect. It's now looks like it's coming to a town near you, Dallas, Houston. You have a problem. The Cook County, I'm sure that that hasn't stopped. We told you it was all international there. And so this is all going to the IMF. If everyone thought nobody had property, this is proven to you that you do have property, but they haven't taken it yet. But this system will cause this theft because you will be ignorant of how they didn't take the property, and you won't recognize how to respond against it, and they will take the value by this system that you have no control over. So who starts this system? Let me remind you again. Old information, back news today. Cryptocurrencies. Remember, Bitcoin's a cryptocurrency. Ethereum is a crypto contract connection, and they pretend that there's going to be some fidelity in it. Oh, they're not changeable. Yeah, well, they may not be changeable, but they're not meeting law in the United States of America for the proof of ownership on originating documents, which we found out when you don't have that, the entities involved here that do the plunder will make up their own documents to try and prove their ownership, which means none of them actually have it, see, is the point. Why? Because the system of the United States has a foundation that sits that they can't touch. The systems they fabricate can't happen. They do because no one arrests them. They do because it's beyond our perception of crime. They do it as an adjunct to other things. They deviate. They cause the deviation to be normal, the new normal. They've been telling us the entire time. This is one of the methods. The new normal is a part of the sustainable development, part of how they do the methods of consensus, how dispute resolution gets worked through. We'll just make a new normal. What's the alternative, they ask you. And you're only going to build an alternative on something that they've built the platform for. And so now you stick your property in an Ethereum contract that now has tokenized the value through Bitcoin, which is now screaming at $4,000. I think Cliff High is saying it's going to go to $13,000. And those of you that scream about fiat don't have a question about this. How do you think it's going to $13,000 on nothing? Maybe predictive of the fact that it's actually going to be on nothing. It's going to be on you. You will be supporting that. You're back. Your property, you will be the asset that is monetized. You are going to be property. And you're going to be living on the global plantation. And you think you have property. But you didn't know about property, so you are the property. If you don't get this with this reporting that they're tying Bitcoin with Ethereum to an SDR, and they're backing the Bitcoin and Ethereum connection to assets and production, tangible things, and you don't think you're going to be one of those tangible things to these people, you are missing the whole entire thing, and I don't even know what you've been listening to me for. If you think you can turn away from this, you're missing it. Parts of your life, even if it's not, they grab you as they move this along, and it's really moving so quickly as it kind of got me alarmed. You may not sense that your life has been turned into a property, but you will be now, remember, inflation is going to be the rule. They will be pulling more and more and more from your life. It'll be harder and harder to keep up. So, did you forget that one? This is how they control your life, because you get involved with that system that they have control over. And if you're not feeling alarmed at the revelation that it's already happening, it's been in play, just as I was reporting, the news was telling us it was right around the corner last year and before. That was I just compiled all that information in a few weeks, over weeks, to be able to pull it together for you. You're really missing it. So around the world we come back to Trump. He's going to declare a trade war on China. They're going to be holding the process. The IMF gave it to them. We're back into the United States Congress and Fed and all that other stuff. The Bank of International Settlements set up to do all this plunder. Well, who starts this cryptocurrency? It comes out pretty quickly. We were reminded again. We were told before, if we forgot, cryptocurrencies, the next level of power and control developed by the NSA. And so this tool, as I've been really concerned with, I really like the digital currency idea. I really do. And I'm embarrassed to have this big conundrum in me. It is a powerful tool to free up people. The problem is the people haven't made a plan to do that for themselves. And those that are making the plan have been at it for a long time, and they're now going to the ancient wisdom of the world in order to do this. If you don't miss that point about going to China. They're going to plantationize all and everything you do and everything you have. And the fact that they're going to do it means they don't have it quite yet. And if you're not taking a little bit of alarm on this, because I may not be explaining it quite so bad, you start reading these, looking at these videos, I think there might be a little more imperative brought to you. If you don't understand the world and how this is working around and how the United States of America is actually the core of this problem as well, even though China's running it. See, it goes back to those nodes and who controls those standards and registrations, doesn't it? This has all been planned before you, and Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is all I can remind you of. And as I say that, it was reminded by the Minds.com poster. Said he keeps reposting that document over and over. So I thank him for that. It's kind of an obtuse type of a document, but they've been telling us what's going on. The NSA is involved in this. The NSA wants all that data. They're using the corporations to do it, and all the corporations want about the bottom line, and they're about to bridge the chasm that should be maintained between land law, production from the land or the watershed, and commerce and the plunderers, whether they be on Wall Street or in Beijing. Cryptocurrencies, the next level of power and control developed by the NSA. And what did I just talk about? They're going to take the power and control. They're taking the land, and they're taking your law. With the property, they take your law, and they don't have to give you the law no more because you don't have to have, there's no takings because you don't have the property. You've handed it to this asset collection system. Big vacuum. They're going to make a vacuum, all right. It's going to be a vacuum between your rights and your way of life and your law and how to protect yourself. They're going to vacuum all that up, and they're going to maintain control over it. And they'll have the power because you now have none, and you were crickets. And part of me is really, in a way, devastated at what I'm looking at here. I don't even have the words to really fully describe it. I really wish I did. I want to scare the hell out of you and get you into yourself. Stop listening to me and start protecting yourself. Start understanding how. The future is now. How to use this right now. They're attacking you now. If they're going to digitalize tea leaves, folks, please. For all the tea in China. That's an unlimited source of valuation that they can run through. They have an unlimited amount of bits they can create out of all that. And when I told you about the carbon market with its carbon dioxide, they monetize down to the molecule. Look at all the so-called money that they can be messing with in order to control your life in the future. Let me put this another complexion on. When they put this Ethereum Bitcoin standard of regulation together, and you have a piece of property you register with the corporation that you didn't know you're registering with now. It's the public-private partnership that is the asset collection system that looked like your county clerk before. And some code enforcement officer says, now you have to keep track of this property. And I found a ding in your gutter, like we're already hearing the stories, and I'm going to fine you. You will have no defense. Zero. Like most people don't already. But you will have no defense. This is what you're seeing. I told you, they put the code enforcement up ahead to get you used to it. The deviant normalcy is on you already. They got code enforcement that's not supposed to be onto your land, but no one knows how to throw it off. I say no one. I have a good idea how to do it, and I've got a couple cases running where it's been done. But we have to rely on the law of the land, the United States laws, and the evidences, and we have to rely on the grant relationship, like I keep talking to you all about. Who actually has the power over the land, and how? How do you prove it? And what due process are you going to use, and how are you going to keep off the oppressor that makes them look like in the uniform that makes it look like they're the do-gooder? How do you throw that off? It's not that hard of an answer. You just have to know it. So these code enforcers become another tax on you. A tax on you. They tax you with it. Oh, you have a ding in your gutter. Fix it up because you have to maintain this property to the standard that the investors, the plunderers that had access to the registry are expecting in their investment. So it's not being discussed. Well, all this stuff is going on in the world. we're missing this real fundamental thing. You think what's going on in Syria is important now? I've been talking about the mirror and all that stuff and how they're showing us that what they're doing to us here. This is the fulfillment of that process in this revelation, essentially, that they are already here. They've now monetized all the tea leaves in China, folks. They're coming to a city near you. Dallas. Houston, we have a problem. You're next. And on it will go pretty quickly, I'm sure. The process developed by NSA and the monetization of the world is now in the hands of the United States government. Those who control the government. And if you don't think there's enough asset value to create constant war now at every level, because nobody knows the law to protect them against it, you're deluding yourself. Completely delusional. You think your anarchy movement, you think your objections against, you think your protesting in the streets is going to change anything? I've told you, you got to get into the seats of the government and oust those people that are doing this to you. You need to develop non-dependent systems that are more trustable and in hand for everything you do now. That when I can't see how silver coin isn't going to be an advantage here, and I'm speaking to the winds here, but and the people that I'm talking to probably don't have the big industry that would try to stand up against this. And how can they? Every company you look at a website that talks about sustainable this and sustainable that, that's what they're talking about. This thing is about done. None of it was true. 103 years later, the FT admits it lied and colluded with the Bank of England. So there's a fraud of omission here, folks. The banks will do whatever they, as we know, but now it's in the Bank of England. We find out that they lie. 103 years ago, they set up a problem in the war, again the war for this money, that there wasn't enough people that actually turned out. And so, Financial Times of the time, 1914, supported the banking system by promoting that everything was all fine and promoting the war through fraud by omission. Quote, despite claims it was swamped with buyers, the 1914 war loan raised less than a third of its 350-pound target, attracting a very narrow set of investors. Sounds almost like today, where China was going to have a very narrow set of investors, I reported on last year, on what they're doing. And then we hear the promotion of Bitcoin, $4,000. You know, folks, what if China's buying that up to drive it up, and get you excited about it? You shouldn't be excited anyway, because you now realize that Bitcoin and Ethereum are a trap. They are a trap. It doesn't matter how the more value you see actually put to it, is the tighter the noose will be around your neck, and the faster they'll be able to destroy you. $4,000 for an electron, folks, is not a monetary system you should be actually putting your faith in anyway. And who can afford that now? And if you can, markonthebeach.yahoo.com. I could use a couple extra things if that's where you're going to throw your money away. And what is that? You're paying fiat to fit to electron? How much nonsense do we continue telling ourselves about all this? That we complain about the usefulness of all this stuff. How much we don't like it and how much it's hurting us. And the more we continue to lie to ourselves about that, the more they're using it against us. They lied to us. The banks they work with the bankers, this media. We now hear the story about it. I could read through this. I don't even want to read it now. We're really, this other thing is so much more important. It's so much more detrimental to us. It's so much more immediate. But we have proof now 103 years later, that what you were being told or what was omitted from being told was, ends up being a lie, a fraud. How much more will you wait today? What do you think I'm talking about today that you're not being told is the story 103 years from now? And look at your relationship to that story 103 years ago. We don't care. Who cares? That was them. Here it is. The revolution's against you. It comes right back around. History is slapping you right on the ass right here. Boom. And you're not being told about, well, you're being told about Ethereum and Bitcoin, but you're not being told. You're not really being told. If you go back to that website on the AC chain, they're pumping you up with telling you the truth, but they're pumping you up with a bunch of nonsense. They're not actually disclosing the reality behind the whole thing. And if you listen to the videos that I'll have the links for this in the blogcaster, listen very carefully, you'll see how she explains it really well. You can hear putting yourself into property law, and that you can hear how well thought out this is by these people, even in how she relates, how she understands it with some things that it looks like she doesn't understand. That's how clear this really is, of how bad it's going to be. And so the media sits there, again, as another propaganda tool. We now have proof regarding banks and wars, you're going to be lied to, whether that's an outright lie or whether that's the omission to tell you the truth. I'm telling you today you're being not fully disclosed in what's going on about this SDR and all these other things relative to your property right at home, folks. What you do, if they go tea leaves, they're going to do grapes. They'll do whatever production you have, folks. It'll be, somehow they'll figure out to get it right down to you. And they'll make it maybe real attractive for you to want to get involved. Any businessman wants to make it easier on themselves, don't they? How easy this is to destroy a whole nation, a whole world. It's unfathomable. How could they control the whole world? And they're going to do it, folks. This is like me not being able to understand a trillion. I couldn't count to a trillion all my life, counting as fast as I could. How am I supposed to conceive of it is this question of how'd they do that? And they did it. Pretty fascinating at one level. And the propaganda machine's all set up. That's all set up for your consumption. Are you going to wait till your sons and daughters going to walk into this problem 103 years from now and say, oh, how dumb was dad and mom? Now look at us. And they're sitting there in chains. They're in their electronic chains. The property that they've been given over to invest back into what their property was has been eaten up because they didn't have the principle of temperance and principle at all to begin with, that they used the extension like we can't use credit. We've proven as people we're not capable of actually, for the most part, using credit wisely, that not easily, wisely. And we use it easily. And yes, I said it 3 times there, Vince, easily. And so we've proven to these folks that they're these plunderers, that we're not capable of maintaining ourselves within our debt structure, that they're going to attach it to all the property you thought you owned. So by the time that you're done, you don't have a property to give to your offspring. They're going to tie your health care to that asset. See, you're going to have your account, like the Patriot people have been warning for 20 years, but it's not going to be the way it was supposed to be, what everyone they were saying. It's going to be it's going to be the mark of the beast, and it's going to be the beast system. It's going to be the cashless society, and you're going to get your funds through the products that you create and by the standards they offer you. And it's going to be underneath this austerity. And if you have too much, they'll start taxing you particularly to make your payment go somewhere else that they'll manage, and they're going to take their cut as they go through this. And the media is going to sing the high praises. The media, even the so-called alt media, is promoting $4,000 right now. And I mean, I'm glad they're there so I can see it. But it's a psyop, I think. It's what to get you all fired up into it. Oh, I'm going to try and make me some money now. Oh, it's going to go up to 13,000. Let me get in right now and see if I can make a couple on a little spics and electrons. And it has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with getting you to drop your guard and get engaged and get working with it, even if you're going to jump back out. But then how, folks? When they've got everything, how? Where are you going if they've got everything? You think you own your property? You think you're going to own it long if you become any vocal somehow? You think you're going to have your property that long? So the media, certainly, we've got another proof. 103 years to find the truth. Are you going to wait 103 years to find the truth of what they've done to us today? What they're doing to us today? How about if you didn't believe that there was a problem with the propaganda part of this, and the lies and the deceit and the omissions, How about NBC's Brian Williams? Quote, "Our job is to scare people to death," close quote, over North Korea. What a fascinating little entertainment that's become. Why did Trump declare a trade war on Monday with China? It's the same problem with North Korea. But Brian Williams, out of his mouth, our job as a newscaster is to, as a news presenter, is to scare the people to death. Folks, what have I told you the definition of terrorism is? Given the propaganda system called the news, mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, even alt, I see alt the same way. If not dishonestly, ignorantly, advancing the wrong positions a lot of times and the wrong points. Not giving the point of beyond, that we take the information and then go on to, how to stop it. Our job is to scare the people to death. If the government, given the media is an arm of the government, now not this, fourth branch or fifth branch or fifth column, whatever the heck you want to call them all, the third way, all this international nonsense. Maybe it's no longer the protector. Maybe it's the government tool. It's going to lie to us. They say that now, Brian Williams says it's going to scare people to death. The definition for terrorism is a system of government that rules by fear, intimidation, and dread. A system of government that rules by fear, intimidation, and dread. Okay. Now what? The system of government would be the propaganda side, which is the media, and he says they're going to scare people to death. That's just another terrorism. So here they're not, he said it openly. People are aghast at this. This is exactly what they're telling us the truth. It really will be a point where in the future we'll have no excuse for why we did nothing. When we're faced with these people really are an open book to us. They're open community. They're not disclosing us how it's not open. They get you to believe it is. It's open to them. They'll have their enforcers all over you to tax and enforce. And remember, the civil rights. No, I haven't said this in a long time. Title 42, Section 1981. Well, what's your civil rights, folks? They've done it. I told you Lincoln lined us up. He told us all about it. Your civil rights are equal to every citizen else. Go read it. Just like the white citizen. I find it very interesting, too, in these so-called race-baiting things that we hear, the alt-right, Trumpsters, the supporters, the supremacists, the Antifada. That 1940, that section, Title 42, 1981 section, it says that these citizens of the United States shall have the same rights as the white citizen. So if you kill the white citizen, you're agreeing that you're the other one underneath this as well. You're not a free people. I find it amazing how these rioting people get together and just identify they're just a bunch of servant subjects to extortion. And that's the point of the Title 42. So I get real cautious about, again, if you look at what's going on, what is white? But you can say you're a white. Well, if you go look at Title 42, you realize those people were slaves. And those persons, a citizen of the United States, will be treated as the white folk there. They don't say folk. The white person. So be very careful on what color you call yourself. You promote your white, and you say yourself in the United States, well, I only have equal rights to what? To pay exactions of every kind and no other. To pay extortions of every kind and no other. That was the right of the white citizen. So why do you call yourself a color at all? Has been kind of not such a funny joke. Why don't you just call yourself a man or a woman and be respectable and be responsible? And stop this nonsense. Off the point here. Your civil rights are to pay exactions of every kind. Isn't what I've just said about Ethereum and Bitcoin being joined up as a third-party controlled system of regulation about with all your property and then your servitude to that because you have your name on something. Isn't that system perfected? So these folks haven't been working any different than what was told to us back in the 1868, when Lincoln told you all how it was going to be. Remember, Lincoln was just a lawyer. You think the Bar Association has gone away? Do you think the Bar Association has gone away at an international level? You've heard it all behind the woodshed if you haven't researched it yourself. Of course it's around, and whom is it in the world but the legal advisor to the Holy See, who is an advisor to the UN, which is an advisor to the UN as well as legal matters? It's all tied around to the same controlling structure. And they get the soldiers that are out there get their marching orders from it, and unless you're involved with that system, you're part of that plundering, controlling enforcer. Your life is going to be paying that exactions of every kind, as well as your pet goat or your kids. Farmer heartbroken after cop feared for his life and killed his prize goat. I always find it amazing how these stories pop up to prove certain things. Who are they going to have come into code enforce, folks? Who are the cops that we told you? I have another proof that you can be too smart to be a cop, and you probably are too smart if you're not a cop. I didn't say that. The Supreme Court said it. And you're also too psychologically stable to be a cop, and this story proves it. I go down to read the story, and here's the farmer talking. He says, this goat got out. The farmer admits it. The goat slipped out. He says they're escape artists. It got out of his fence, and it ran around the neighborhood. The cop caught up to it and feared for his life and kills this goat. Shoots him, and doesn't kill him, actually. He shoots him until the goat finally dies. Because the farmer shows up, and the goat's huffing and puffing. This is a $1,200 prize breeding goat. And apparently, they're really, really docile. They're so docile, despite the horns they have and their size, that they're found in petting zoos. And the farmer says in this report, and they say, yeah, it was either me or the goat, says the cops, he says. And I said, man, there are 7-year-old kids that deal with these goats. Infants that deal with these, says Minnick, the farmer. So I looked at that 7-year-old kids, those are goats too, 7-year-old kids, and I said, wow, there's another, if 7-year-old kids can deal with these goats without shooting them, I think we can prove you can be too smart to be a cop. And so I went real quick and I found a place, and we were talking about what is this IQ that they talk about, and I'm just looking to see what's the IQ of an age 7 kid, little goat. By age 6, all the children in an experimental group were dramatically superior to the children in the control group. I'm just reading in the middle of an article. Don't want to get to the point. Oh, so now we see with special training will increase the IQ of children. But the control group, the one that gets stuck in the massive education process, is going to maintain a control IQ. Reading on, this was true on all tests measured. There's a dramatically superior intellect in children that are cared for and educated correctly over the ones that are left behind. Oh, which none are left behind, see. This was true on all tests measured, especially those dealing with language, skills, or problem solving. Oh my goodness. You mean if you actually educate little goats, that they have better language skills and they can solve problems? What, do you think the government may not like that? They don't want you to solve problems? You think maybe the control group was the group that just gets special regular education and doesn't get the attention that maybe I got when I was going up through school? Because I kind of enjoyed school. It was a big adventure for me. Did all kinds of things, learned all kinds of stuff. We were encouraged in all that. We were given a future with it as well. Now that may have been a lie, but notwithstanding, I didn't know that at the time. The experimental group, the one that was specially treated in this IQ test, The control group in this case did not receive special education or home-based intervention and enrichment. The control group didn't get much, but the experimental group got the information that they need and how to do it. Their IQ average was 120.7, as compared to the control group's 87.2. 87.2 for the norm mentality. Now, I'm sure most of these cops didn't get that special homeschool, special education that it raises their intellect, so they'd be part of this control group standard at 87 IQ for age 6. So I've said, the government says that you'd be too smart for a cop, and I've said, I'm on record over and over, that that's 80 IQ minus. I think I was pretty close. The control group, the run-of-the-mill student, is an 87.2 if you are age 6. A cop has to be less than that because a 7-year-old pets the goats. Wouldn't have pulled a gun out and shot the goat or feared for his life. And so I think I've taken a little bit of time here to explain, again, you can be too smart to be a cop, and that IQ is less than 80. Because the farmer knows that a petting zoo goat can be handled by infants, and we know the active ones can be at least 7, and they still don't fear the goat. The infant may not know. 7-year-old knows. But a cop doesn't. So maybe we're dealing with infants as well? Well, it can't be because the infant can't wield a gun, can't we? So we have a dangerous intellect, as I've been trying to show you all the time. These are the people that are going to be enforcing your Bitcoin and Ethereum registrations in the future. The truth is important. Information disclosure. Everywhere we turn, we're not getting it, and so it's required that you have to dig in where you have to. Makes it difficult when a Mozilla browser going through Soros or Omidyar which we understand. We have I don't think the guy is up and up at all. I don't even know the guy, but there's too many things that I don't trust, if anything. So I've lost the confidence. Gone. Trust no good. No trust. No confidence. That's what you need in a fair money, in a good money, is a trust. Can't trust a Bitcoin. Certainly can't trust when someone else is manufacturing it. But we also can't trust the information. But the government runs on all this stuff. And the standards that private-public partnership is going to create around this Ethereum is going to be based on information. And we have no more proof. Those of us that have been listening in on this kind of take it and it's almost disregarded because we hear it so often. We know this. I'm going to bring it up in the context that these types of data that are fabricated and these news that are put out there, there's a real truth known. And if you don't know it, they make these standards and regulations on your stuff after you become property. And you're going to know you're going to wish you were a plantation slave. You were going to wish the South rose again. You're going to wish you saw the flags of the Confederacy and there were statues to remind you of how good that slave had it when he was actually a sharecropper. Over how you're going to be treated underneath this transparent digital control plantation over the world, this caucustocracy, technocracy. Researcher claims to have evidence that one of EPA's most successful clean water rules is based on fabricated data. This is supposed to be the government that's supposed to protect your environment. And I've already told you that's a lie too. Again, the Clean Water Act is not an act to clean water, it's an act to pollute water just so much. One of the Environmental Protection Agency's longest and most successful air pollution standards is based on a taxpayer-funded study plagued by, quote, data fabrication, falsification, close quote. Okay, enough of there. They talk about carbon monoxide and all this in automobiles. You can go read more and more, whatever you want to do. Bottom line is that even the governmental agencies are allowing fraudulent data. This is the problem with best sciences, isn't it? This is the standard that's going to be used when Bitcoin and Ethereum get connected to your properties. If you aren't already suffering underneath these code enforcements. William Roberts, it keeps coming to my mind, he was telling you that for years. He kept bringing up that international code, didn't he? Kept bringing up Agenda 21 and Section, Chapter 7. Kept bringing it up to y'all. Not like I wasn't either, but he was more he had a setup, he went from his dictionaries, his encyclopedias, to the source documents, back to the agenda, and he'd go that over and over and over. What he was telling you is here, now in earnest, but you may not have your own property, but you will still be suffering exactions of every kind. That will be equal across the world. And if you have a little bit extra, you'll be taxed a little bit more, and that system will take it away and pretend that they're handing it to someone with less. This is best science is applied to that horrendous connection of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and SDR, run by China. So when can we agree? When can we be finding information that we need? Is it even when the government says so? See, this is where you have to learn to discern. The EPA is going to make decisions on fraudulent data. No, remember, we do coordination with the BLM, not Black Lives Matter. This was the Bureau of Land Management for Public Lands, where they were fraudulently asserting a science that was a fraud about the sage-grouse. We called it all out for a long time. About a year, it shut down. And then they brought it back when they thought no one was looking. And so it still kind of sits there and festers as this nasty wound when in fact there's no science behind the protection of the sage-grouse. They were using data that was fabricated, right out falsified, folks. This is across the government. This is the same type of government and governing locally that's going to happen in a condition when you didn't really pay much attention and they've commoditized all your land and all your production, all the assets of your life, and then they commoditize you. That's where it ends up going. Only now they're going to get rid of your ability to get in at that account. If you were a patriot thinking that was out there and you could have the account, that's going to be gone from you as well, because you won't be able to get into the registry. The FDA allows macadamia nuts health claim. What? The FDA allows macadamia nuts health claim? So is this real life, real good information or not? Well, I don't know if anybody's overdosed on macadamia nuts. Now, this report, now we're seeing a little bit of self-censorship. This author says, since I don't want to be accused of making things up, I herewith reprint the FDA notice in its entirety. I thought was really the tail of the tape here. Now we're not going to even talk unless the government says so. Yeah, I hope you all went real quick on where the problem that leads to. Now I want you to go back and keep tying this into your monetization of your life and your property. The governmental authorities will be all-powerful. And we already see evidence on the internet that people are deferring to a governmental publication. And why not? In this case, the FDA completes a review of qualified health claim petition for macadamia nuts and the risk of coronary heart disease. And they say, it's pretty cool. I won't go on to it. You can read the story. So here we have where you don't hardly ever hear these sanctions. Sanctions is a double-edged sword too. That means good and bad at the same time. But they allow a health claim for macadamia nuts, and that's pretty cool. So what about when they also agree that some other pharmaceutical is good? And we see it right on the data sheet that it can cause real harm, and then they pass it. So how much value is it that someone says, oh, this will help possibly at the risk of help the risk of coronary heart disease? I mean, I don't know how many nuts you're going to be able to eat in order for that to happen, but that other oils and other nutrition may not help better than other lifestyle and diet choices, but there it is. We can now start all getting our macadamia nuts. I suppose that when they put the Ethereum, when they start to monetize and tokenize macadamia nuts, your carbon footprint will go up, and it's going to be an offset, and they'll raise the price just because we have a demand that they can control now, because they have the power of the tokenization of the value. Remember, and don't forget, they're doing it that way because they can then cause negative interest rates on whatever other system they have, which causes the inflation on top of their control. FDA completes review of qualified health claim petition. So why doesn't more people file those, folks? EPA successful rule based on fabricated data. And then we come on over here. Remember I was telling you EPA was having all those monitors when Fukushima was attacking the West Coast, and those people of Fukushima were really messed up. And I said, they're going to be messed up, but not at the West Coast. And then all the monitoring that the EPA was supposed to be doing, and they knocked all their monitors down. And I said, folks, what they did is not what the fearmongers and fear porn players were doing at the time. What they're doing is they're finding out that they're actually getting readouts, and it's going to be showing that the radiation is coming from local sources. And here we have now a report based on an event, because now everyone's looking at it because there was an event. This stuff happens all the time, but radioactive plutonium detected in air near a Hanford nuclear facility. So they had those tunnel collapses over there, and they're actually measuring plutonium now. And here we have more sources of radiation that are inside the gates. Fukushima is not doing any of this. And that Hanford has been a problem. It's leaking into the water. We have the notice that we have plutonium in the air, that you don't hear anybody being evacuated. But you can live downwind from that if you want. Seems to be okay. Remember, this is all about bottom line. If they get to start treating you, then the biopharma syndicate cartel makes great money on you. And when they tie this Bitcoin Ethereum contract to your property, they'll be able to start taxing you for how much health care they give you. As I'm saying, they're going to take your asset away by you having to be just living. So if the EPA is allowing that, and they allow falsified data, why is it even news that scant oversight and corporate secrecy precede U.S. weed killer crisis? That people in the ground, farmers, are now showing pictures of how all this government-sanctioned chemistry, or I don't know what, it's not even, they sanction harm. They permit crime. And they're allowing this in the world. I guess got to go back to that. So you got pollution of all sorts, you got falsified data, and around you the world is creating an environment by all the bottom line corporations, the same ones that are going to be the ones in the registry taking from the Ethereum Bitcoin SDR valuation through the governments for grants and other projects that they fund, like the Bank of International Settlements. At the U.S. growing season entered into its peak this summer, farmers began posting startling pictures on social media, fields of beans, peaches, orchards, and vegetable gardens withering away. The photographs served as an early warning of the crisis that has damaged millions of acres of farmland. New versions of the herbicide dicamba, developed by MonSatan and BASF, according to farmers, have drifted across fields to crops unable to withstand it, and authorities are investigating. Well, so here's the other thing. Remember, we had the pollen that could be moving from these seeds that use these chemistries that pollute a neighbor's property. And as I've said before, and I worked with Gary L. just to see, he had an idea, and I said, why don't you turn this invasion of some property owner onto someone else as a remedy for the property owner so invaded? This would be the same kind of a thing. We have evidence that these chemicals that are allowed are hurting neighbors. So that's not so neighborly. And they still are used, and then the people that are being harmed don't have a remedy. You can provide a local remedy for this if you make a law to support property rights. So we can let these people harm us, or we can start making some of the infrastructure law we need in order to give people remedy. And you have to be very thoughtful, but it's still the fact that it's not here yet and yet they're already monetizing the world by tokenization, really shows you where the work has been going. And so you have to, this is just an example to me to tell you that you have to take what you want in your hands, because if you don't, someone's going to take it from you. MonSatan lawyers forgot to ask a court to suppress damning evidence about cancer and corrupt science. And so this is another aspect of the agencies, not just falsifying data or doing wrong data, but the companies give them wrong data. And you don't know that, as I told you before, until you do a lawsuit. MonSatan is facing over 100 lawsuits in federal district court in San Francisco, brought by people who attribute their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma to exposure of glyphosate in MonSatan's Roundup weed killer. And as part of the discovery process, it submitted internal documents to the court that details shenanigans in the company's internal science and its dealings with regulators and the press. Now, I'll just stop reading there. We have a link to the MonSatan secret documents by the lawyers group that is running the case. And the important part of all this ends up being a couple things that hit the Twitter sphere. I remember seeing, and I've had this on my board. I finally getting to it here from a week ago. The ghostwriters in peer review and retraction, MonSatan consultant protested ghostwriting, saying, "I can't be part of a deceptive authorship." MonSatan was inside. There's evidence now. They were inside attempting to cause their words to be placed into peer-reviewed or documentation and editorials. And then there's also the interference. We heard about that Seralini scientists and experiments that MonSatan scientist David Saltmiras admits to leveraging relationship with editor of Food and Chemical Toxicology Journal in effort to retract Seralini's study. And there's a whole bunch of those things about that study. That was the tumored rats that I reported behind the woodshed. Lots of people did, about the effects of GMO, and that MonSatan was in on the inside. And I got a report continuing that focuses on that. Editor of Science Journal that forced retraction of Seralini GMO study entered a promotional contract with MonSatan right before smearing the research. So we're back to being able to learn to discern. We're to the point where the browsers are going to only funnel us to certain information, and we're going to have to be out there fighting for the information that we need. The information is going to be all critical in order for us to defend ourselves against these secret, silent things that are happening right in our face, all the way to the shocking moment that we hear that they're on the move against your property and they're going to tokenize it. They're going to put it in a digitization formula, and all the plunderers are going to have at it. They're going to have access to it, and you won't. You're going to be footing the bill for every bit of it. Every bit of it. Then they're coming after you. I'm going to be surprised if they don't come after you first, but I think it's already kind of in the line. I'm not sure how they couldn't. It's already set up in a lot of the files. It's why you don't want national IDs. It's why you don't want a national presence. It's why you don't want to get into a record that can be made so or interpreted by these low 80 IQ minus people that are going to be the enforcers. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said kind of sparks it today. There's the alarm today, folks. They're really getting it moved along quick, like lightning. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do at reallibertymedia.com, the blogcaster and the archives, with Bo Diddy over there at freedomsnetwork.com, social network. You can sign up there, folks. And Jules, UCY.tv, thank you very much for your broadcast and past cast and recast on Thursday and the terrestrial broadcast. I appreciate it. Next week, I'll be with you, tech diffs or nature willing. Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
Well, that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son,
just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.